Helene Vigue, Chief Identity and Data Officer at GSMA, the global association representing mobile operators, driving secure digital transformation on a global scale. Helene leads initiatives that connect mobile operators to the digital identity ecosystem, promoting interoperable and trusted solutions. She plays a key role in coordinating groups such as the European Identity Group, which aims to strengthen collaboration between European operators to offer secure, user-centric identity services. Prior to joining the GSMA, Helene gained a decade of experience at Orange, holding roles in technology, innovation, and digital strategy, including global launches of mobile devices and digital services. Helene is one of the most influential leaders at the intersection of digital identity, mobile connectivity, and data security innovation.
Interview number 3, Helen, GSMA. We're going to be talking about mobile identity. Day 2 here at Mobile World Congress. And Helen, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to us chatting about one of my most favorite topics and where I've dedicated 15 years of my life in identity. And I know you have as well in mobile identity, and you're here leading this and working at GSMA. Tell us a little bit about your story, how you got to the space to begin with.
So I guess I came from the telco space to start with. I was at Orange for about a decade and did loads of like innovation, mobile services, and then digital services towards the end. And then I got this opportunity to join the GSMA, and it was just a place for me because it's all about collaboration, bringing people together. And this is just what I love, facilitating that sort of collaboration. And I joined to work on identity because it felt really close to my heart as an issue to solve. It was all about, how can we improve this situation while doing this in a way that's respecting people's personal data and, all that challenge. So I guess that's how I fell into identity about 10 years ago. And a lot happened in that time. And there we are. Tomorrow we've got like a mobile identity summit at NWDC, which is like our first ever after some smaller scale events before. So that's very exciting.
Which is a huge congratulations to her and to the industry. I've watched the industry take us onto like last day on the last track of an event or side events to now having your own. That's a huge congrats and a point of people understanding something you got a clue and an inch and a love for 10 years ago. When was the first time, Helen, that you working or in the space, I guess back in Orange, back in a telecommunication, that you realized identity was an opportunity in the telco space or just an opportunity in general in technology?
Yeah, I think it really, I'll bring it to telco. It was obvious that we needed that bridge between you're using loads of digital services, but a lot of them don't have that link to you as a person in the real world. But the telco really is that bridge between the physical world. I've got my phone, and it's that bridge to digital services. And behind that phone and that phone number, there's a lot. It is me. It's a real user that I've generally had to, prove my identity, and all of that can be helpful for digital services that want to check my identity. So I think that was the premise. It was the idea that there is something there. There's knowledge. There's verification that's taking place that could benefit loads of digital services. The question is how, and that's where the fun begins.
And the question is still super how. Like we still live in a world where we've talked about passwords going away. We talked about biometrics. I remember being scary, now not being scary. But one thing is true, our phones don't leave usually. They go with us, unfortunately, sometimes even to the bathroom. And there's so much intelligence, as you said. But tapping into this collective intelligence is a game of diplomatic skill, to say the least. Requires, as you said, a lot of collaboration with industries, with data that is private, is sensitive, and a knowledge at some point that it was mine. It belonged to me. I remember interviewing incredible bankers across the globe and telecom operators saying that it was their data, and now it's their clients' data. You've seen this happen and this change with Mobile Connect from 2014 up until now. Tell us a little bit about how that change and that evolution and even the collaboration for what you're going to be here launching tomorrow and happening.
Yeah. So I think the idea was that, unfortunately, if you wanted that to work at scale for digital services, it had to work across mobile operators.
Yeah.
And we needed that sort of universal access. So when we launched Mobile Connect, it was very much this idea was how can we do something that's privacy respecting and that's going to give that framework for operators to launch identity services that can work across any network. And then move forward to about 2 years ago, the GSMA launched Open Gateway, which is a broader initiative, but you'll recognize a lot of the sense because it's all about opening the telco networks via, framework of APIs into the network to do anything you want. But the first use case is identity and fraud protection.
Of course.
Because the story remains the same. It's the easiest application for operators. They're doing something that's, yes, it solves a problem for digital services, but it solves a problem for their own users. They're trying to help their users have a easier experience online, but more importantly, more secure and help fight fraud. So it's all about that, building that trust and being that bridge in between. So the collaboration takes multiple forms, but it starts with a big focus on standards. There's been a lot around making sure operators work to a standard way for this service to be easily plugged into digital services. A lot of best practice around data protection, around all the important topics to make sure really the services are what they need to be.
It's a huge challenge, right? We're talking about like intelligence, we're talking about mind shift change, we're talking about API readiness. How does a GSMA like look at, and you said a key word, like the customer expects ease. The boundaries of what we know sovereign countries are never really been true when we think about digital services. We have digital services from everywhere around the globe. We expect we're kind of global citizens between our multiple languages and multiple affiliations and interests. And this personhood issue is now a problem more than ever. AI is here, buzzword bingo of the month or the year. We've sat with a lot of leaders here talking to us about how it's no longer just a buzzword, how there's use cases in order. In identity and fraud, we know that that's true. We know that the bad guys do not follow protocols. They don't care about standards. They test and look at the latest and greatest technology out there. And to prove somebody is themselves online, it's a challenge still.
And that's why you bring it back to that phone, because there is a real user behind that phone. How do you prove someone is not a bot? How do you prove that this is a person? The phone number is a pretty good indicator. You probably don't have loads of phone numbers. You've got a limited number of them. They're linked to you. And if you lose access to your digital service, ultimately it will often come back to your phone number. And if you've lost your phone, well, there will be a system for the mobile operator to help you securely recover your phone number onto a different phone. And so that phone number follows you as a user. And so that's where you really help have that connection to real people and fight some of the challenges around synthetic identity or whatever it might be, because you've got that.
Yeah. When you think about this ecosystem of the phone, there was a lot of really interesting conversations around who plays in that space. On GSMA, you talked about a word being collaboration, but you talked a lot about telcos. How do you see security providers, other providers, how does the GSMA build this ecosystem? Because there's a lot of intelligence in this little piece of device that we carry around, and a lot of different players that we know, some holding the operating system, some holding the hardware. How do you look at this ecosystem to bring, what you said, better service, better security, better opportunity online?
Yeah. So we started with fairly simple services, I guess, with these APIs that operators have been exposing. They don't plug them into the digital services directly. There's, as you say, is an ecosystem play, and there's a lot of partners that help to bring that across operators to then, adapt it to whatever the use case might be. It could be that it's used by a fraud risk engine. It could be that it's used as part of your communication platform as an enterprise. So, a typical, because it's a typical evolution, for example, of authentication that might have been done with SMS one-time password. Just to take one example of one of those APIs I keep referring to.
One that people are super, just so people out there that are listening understand, we're talking about the simple one, SMS, that everybody gets as code as a form of authentication. Let's double down into that.
Yeah, so for example, that one, we're all familiar with SMS one-time password, but there's been a desire to try and build the next generation from that. And so that's one of the services that mobile operators have launched. It's called Number Verify in many markets. It's based on seamless authentication done by the mobile network. So you might enter your phone number, but then the magic happens in the background. Your phone operator checks that it's really that phone number, and you're through. So you don't get a code, you don't have to enter something. And it solves a number of little issues from a user perspective, from a security perspective. It's just, you're not going to give this code to someone else. And so it's really, really helpful. But that service, it's not going to go, when you talk about ecosystem, of course, to be in the hand of the brand that's going to finally use it, you'll have intermediaries. So last week you might have seen there was an announcement by Google.
Yeah.
They're making this available via Firebase, their platform for developers, for them to make use of phone number verification, which is this exact same technology. It's that I was just describing. So how do you move from SMS one-time password to a seamless phone number verification? So they've plugged the telco assets, they've got this platform for developers, and it's just one of the models. You've got a lot of big CPaaS players, communication platform providers that offer this as an evolution to their SMS one-time passwords, and it's also done by other actors, depending on who's trying to use this for their own purposes.
And when we're bringing this and bringing standards, this is a huge challenge because we all know that telecommunication companies don't operate in an open system in every country. And legislation, when it comes to privacy, it's slightly different interpret. How are you working to bring standards that bring this global outreach? A SIM is a SIM, an eSIM is an eSIM everywhere I go.
Right.
What are some of the challenges that are still being faced to truly bring this globally?
So I think it's really helpful where there's a clear regulatory environment. So you talk about it, yes, there are variations, but in these regions where we've got a clear data protection laws, smart data protection laws, operators know what they can and can't do. And typically these services that are trying to detect fraud, you will find a way to minimize the data that's processed for them, so that you do a service that complies and goes beyond, and where you know what's happening, you know the people that are potentially in the chain, and it's you can find a good basis. I think obviously that's not the case everywhere, and for sure, we'd be advocating for smart data privacy laws everywhere, because that gives that certainty.
Same.
Because operators have to operate in, and they've got a lot of local laws that applies to them, and that's obviously they're first and foremost going to look after these, and in that sense, anything that relies on their data will only happen if they've got the framework to be able to do that and to collaborate with other sectors that might benefit. So for sure, that's needed.
And how are you seeing other sectors, Helen, like work? We know we see a lot here at Mobile World Congress. We have cross industries. We don't just have telecommunication. I've sat a lot with a lot of bankers, a lot of huge fintech leaders. How are you seeing the representation in the identity space changing,
fintech,
and the importance?
Services.
Talk about this.
Absolutely.
Let's double down into that. I see
Yes.
the smile of seeing
yes,
they're finally seeing the
where
light.
It started.
Yeah.
It started a while back, to be fair. And
well, they see it from fraud too, right?
Yeah,
Nothing like
exactly,
hitting a P&L.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the problem is really important for banks. And so I think the discussion, it was about creating that dialogue. And in fact, some of my colleagues brought together the Finance Association in whatever market it is. So on stage just today, we had UK Finance with GSMA, because we've worked together in the UK. We bring the operators, they bring the banks. Banks explain their pain points, operators, well, we've actually got that product, would it help? And then they refine. And there's been some more experimentation as fraudsters have evolved. So, 10 years ago, the problem were around SIM swaps. So operators started to put products out there for that. But then fraudsters moved from account takeover protection to scams, where they tell you to move your money to a safe account, and you do it. And the banks have got no way of knowing that your money is not moving to the...
From phishing to smishing to pig butchering, so the stories are horrible.
How do you detect that? But the fraudsters often going to try and socially engineer you by talking to you on the phone. And so is there anything we can do with network analysis to just understand that fraud? And so that was one of the problems the banks put as a challenge to operators. And they started to collaborate. Again, data protection really important, because we needed to understand their fraud data. When I say we, the mobile operators needed to analyze, compare it to what data they could have, to do some, data science analysis, and try and understand, okay, is there some good indicators we could use there to help detect that fraud? And then on the back of that, some services were launched. So the collaboration is absolutely key, because it's understanding what pain points the financial services industry is experiencing. Could happen elsewhere, but this has been really the leading sector where they've really taken advantage of those technologies in many markets.
And this is just the beginning, because one of the things that I get most excited about a lot of this adoption and understanding the importance of something, I don't know, I've been banging on around identity for quite some time. Identity is not just about authentication and protecting human beings, but it's about intelligence, business. It's about being a good listener, understanding what kind of signals can help us predict, perhaps include or involve other people in financial services or other types of services that haven't been. What's been exciting you about the collaboration? You said that many services have come out of it. You said that a lot of industries are now, co-creating and building products and understanding that they can't build everything alone.
Yeah, I think there's been two sort of trends at the same time. There's been the fact that the leaders have been innovating new products, new services. There's a lot of noise at the moment around age assurance, for example, and that's another area where there could be some intelligence to help. If you don't want to be trying to show your driving license online, which might not be super easy, is there any other way that you could prove you're over 18 if you need to buy some alcohol online or something? So is there anything that mobile data could help with in this space? So there's obviously a lot of innovation in terms of products, but there's also been, I think, probably the hardest bit, but also the most needed bit, which is that innovation in terms of getting the network coverage, getting all the operators. So about 2 years ago, GSMA announced Open Gateway, and that was really put the spotlight massively on mobile identity. Up until then, I would say it was best kept secret. It was the little groups I worked with, they all knew, but it wasn't really fair. And now you talk to any mobile operator person, they'll have an idea of what that is. So, and then they'll work on it, they'll expose these services, and then we get that ubiquity. So we try to count how many operators launch such services, and I think it's over 200 APIs launched that we know of, but that's just probably the tip of the iceberg, and they're all part of identity anti-fraud propositions, and that's giving us that coverage. The fact that you can now get these services across markets, and that's really the hard craft. So you can have great innovation in pockets, but the brands will often be operating in multiple markets, and we need to really give them that across market. And that's been the challenge.
I think you said some amazing words there around ubiquity. Like humans, we have this thing, this underlying nature that connects us all, and technology has somehow forgotten that. Or at least forgotten to harness that intelligence. I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about, things like age verification. I think a huge part of the responsibility that the industry has is how do we use intelligence to protect, to safeguard this world of oversharing. As you said, it does not need to be just a bouncer, but like, what do I share and what do I get in return? This ability to secure and protect people, I think it's a responsibility of a lot more than just the financial services industry. When you see the collaboration happening, what is missing still? What are you hoping to see for the next years to come? Like 2 years ago, you said it was one of the best kept secrets. Now you're seeing things, even change legislation in age verification in a lot of countries become a political swaying issue, which is what it should be, protection of us online and how do we safeguard people? What's next with all of this innovation?
So I think there's definitely evolution in terms of more sophisticated solutions, more like we've just talked about, but there's also sophistication in understanding how you get this in the hands of the users or the enterprises that will use it for their users. And we were talking about partnerships a minute ago. That is not these are not core telco services at the start. You access your mobile services, your voice, your data. That's what you're very imperative for. So how do you get this service in the enterprise stack? That's been, I think, a real learning curve, and there's still a lot of innovation happening there. As I said, some announcements in the last few weeks. A lot of models appearing where mobile operators are trying to find ways to make sure that an enterprise doesn't have to deal with 800 operators around the world, gets the services to the channel that works for them, whether that's a fraud, whether they're a developer, whether they're looking at this from a communication angle. So how do you get that? So I think that's short term, where I still see a lot of evolutions to expect. And then I guess you go towards wallets and you think, okay, what happens when instead of exchanging this data directly, you put a wallet in the hands of the user. Send data remains valid and relevant. But you just need to find a different way to communicate it. So they send data, but a different channel, let's say, to get in the hand of the user and the enterprise are trying to verify them. So,
and I think it even puts another layer of like a real chance of us re-owning the relationship, understanding that we're never going to own the data of the client or own the data of like the transaction, but the most that we can do is add value. And I think in the wallet scenario, which we all know there's a wallet war going on out there, and you see it with the announcements. You see it with the announcements of Apple. You see it with the announcements of Google. You see it with the announcements of collaboration. So how does a startup or a company or a technology partner look out there at the GSMA, at the group and the work that you're doing? How does somebody get involved?
Join us.
Okay.
We're very open. We've got over 1,000 members already. We've got loads of groups and communities where we bring these discussions together. So, but we also do all these open events. So there's plenty of ways. And joking aside, so.
Joking. I heard her say, join us. I'm going to hold her accountable. So the identity industry grows.
No, but we do a number of things. We do some activities that are more technical and in nature and close to standards. We do a lot of best practice sharing. We help our members, showcase what they're doing to each other. And it's all about knowledge, others seeing it. We're talking about innovation, so we just need to promote these models that are working, and that's just what we do, and through our events.
Well, I'm going to sure be checking the latest events of the GSMA in identity. Thank you so much, Helen, for joining us, for sharing a bit about your story and a bit of the work that you're leading here. I hope people understand that this industry kept secret, an opportunity to actually prove that people are people and they're safe online is not only a mission, but an important change.
Thank you.